So in this video, I want to show the process for taking a character, in this case this Bender model, into Unity and creating a cutscene using tools like Cinemachine and the timeline in Unity, as well as some CineFX filters to kind of create a narrative or a cutscene for a game. So I want to show a couple of things particularly that you may run into about this particular or any model that you import into Unity. So by default in Blender, the materials show up with backface culling turned off, which means you're going to see this character and it looks like everything's fine because you're seeing all of the faces from the correct angle. So if for some reason, and let me just go and fix this real quick. Let's say if I select this and this, and this outer rim, because this was a Boolean object, and this is where I noticed this happening in some of the things. I've already gone and corrected them, but just to show you what happens if it backface culling's turned. By default, this is what you may see, but if you turn on backface culling and you see something like this where suddenly you've got these, it appears to be missing faces, or they're flipped inside out. That's what's happening, is that the normals got flipped because of the way the model was created. And the way you fix that is just to double click, select the faces that are invisible, and that may be difficult to double click in terms of seeing them. So I'll do this one first. So if you go and you've selected the faces that you want to flip and go to Mesh, Normals, Flip, that should fix and arrange the faces correctly. And then you'll see I've got this little front facing part right there that's also needs it. So Mesh, Normals, Flip. Then that way everything is facing the correct direction. So if for some reason you import your character into Blender and you see missing faces or things like that that don't show up in Blender, if you import the character into Unity and the faces that show up in Blender don't show up, that's what's going on. On top of that, you can see that there are some issues with the default normal edges. So, and it's not a huge deal, but just to kind of fix this, because it should, it's basically because I've got this, if you go under the vertex groups and look at normals, I've got this auto smooth turned on in order to fix the way this thing's modeled. It needs to have this for creases. But because the breaking angle is set to 30, which I kind of want to keep, these particular edges don't show or don't break, so you can force that by making marking them as sharp. See how that fixed that. And then here too, probably these. Let me fix. I think everything else should probably be okay. I'm just double clicking on these to, you can also control click. Whoop, accidentally selected the bone. Anyway, let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so that fixed this edge, which is good. Everything else looks okay. There's something interesting about this particular model because of the way he doesn't have the ability to bend in the middle. We'll go into that when we get him in Unity. I'll show you what's gonna happen when we try to apply mocap to it. But that's one of the reasons I like to use this model as an example, is he's got some problems that will show up in Unity. So if we want to export this for Unity, we need a project to export it to. So let's go and open Unity. I'll just do it from my desktop. This is the Unity hub. It's going to open up. We'll go full screen with this. So these are the projects that I've made, and we're going to make it just a new project from scratch. So we'll just say new. That's going to bring up this project selection. It gives you these templates to choose from. The one that we want to choose for now is, we don't want to go with the render pipelines yet. Those will be out in 2019.3. We're using 2019.2. And they change a little bit. Like this LWP becomes, I think, Universal Render Pipeline, URP, which is similar to what you'll get from this, the standard for 2019.2, these 3D as they're set up without the render pipeline. But what we want to do is give our project a name. So we'll call this Unity Tutorial Characters. And I'm just trying to decide if I want to do it with the extras or not. If you look at these presets, example content, I'm just going to go without for now. Let's do it from scratch. So we'll just do the 3D. That'll click open. It's going to start and make the project. And based on where we've built this project, it's going to create a folder structure. Got an auto sensing mode that looks to see what has been added to the project since it was last open. All right, so now we're in Unity, and what you have is a hierarchy scene sort of window here on the left. This is our scene or world building scene sort of window. There's a game preview window, so you can see the difference between the two. Basically, this is like render mode through the camera. Here's our camera, and if you click on that, you see the same thing you'll see in the game view. And then here's our project folder structure. So if we right click in this assets folder and say show and explore, it'll basically take us to where our project got created. So now I'm working on my D drive in this class folder, and I've got this project folder here. So I'm going to make in assets, I'm going to make a character folder. And there's that. Click into that. So now I've added characters folder here. If I go back to Blender and select my armature for my character. Now this armature has additional like IK bones and things like that. They won't really get in the way, but you don't necessarily have to have them. So I'm going to select hierarchy. That'll also select his skin. And then file, export. And in this case, we're going to export it as an FBX. You can actually use blend files. For me, blend files kind of get in the way because you end up getting everything that's in the blend file, and you may not necessarily want that in your game folder, and it's hard to separate them out. So because I'm working in a game and I just want this as an asset for the game, I'm going to export it as an FBX. So if we select that, and then we want to pick our folder where our game is at, which I said was my D drive, and there, going into Unity, and I call this Unity Tutorial Characters, going into Assets, and then here's my Characters folder. I'm going to use the Selected Objects toggle in my export, and then everything else should be fine. So I'm going to export that. If you've got any animation created in Blender, you can export that with them and it'll travel with the FBX file. So now if I go to Unity, notice that it did a little kind of import window. And if I open my characters folder, here's our package or our prefab for Blender. And if you toggle that, you're going to see it's got all of these materials embedded, his mesh, an avatar, and this armature. And what we want to do when you first import a character is if you select it in the project here, you're going to see that it's got over in the inspector window, you've got the model setting, so you can see them. There's going to be some things we have to do to the materials to get them to work correctly. A rig, and the rig has some settings by default that we want to change. The animation, if there is any, and then materials, if there are any. Okay. So the first thing we want to change is this rig. Right now it's set to generic. Generic is what you want to use if you've got like a quadruped, or you've got a bunch of baked animation and you don't plan on using any mocap. You can use this generic rig. And even if you don't plan on using mocap, you could still use the humanoid rig, and your animations should travel across just fine with it. But basically, by using this humanoid rig, any bones that are not part of a standard biped will sort of be ignored, and you'll have to drive those with additional code or bone control scripts. So either or, generic or humanoid can work. But since we're going to be using a lot of mocap, you definitely need to use humanoid. Now, when you do that, it swaps it over. You got the avatar definition. You do want to create it from this model unless you've got some pre-existing avatar that you know the bones are the same. You can create it from that, so you don't have to do some of these other setups. And then skin weights, standard 4 bones is fine. If you do more than that, it can slow down depending on the device. Once you've got all that set, optimize just means it's going to apply some mesh optimization. You don't need to do that. Apply. Now it should, and in 2019.3 it does, it'll show configure, but we've applied, and even though it says the avatar can be configured after settings have been applied, you're not getting access to this button. Just click off over here in the window and select the model again, and then you'll see that you can get the configure option. What we need to do is open that up, and then you'll see this humanoid kind of remapping. This is called mech anim. It's a remapping bone structure, and because we were missing some of the chest bones, it's not showing those bones in the setup. You just see these things, but everything is green, so it's fine. It found the fingers, it found the eyes. These shoulder bones, we actually had shoulder bones in the character, but because our mocap may have shoulder shrugs and things like that, we may or may not want them. I'm going to go ahead and add them just to see, because we can come back and fix it later. So what'll happen then is just looking. Yeah. So that was left arm, so this will be shoulder.l. So it finds that one. Now you see a green dot there. And then for the right arm, same thing. The reason that it didn't find them is that there's no mesh assigned to the shoulder, but because these bones are assigned to it, it can have an effect on the character. So shoulder.r. So now we have those two assigned, and they have this little dotted line. That just means there's no mesh assigned to it. Once you've got that set up, and if you have any red bones, just go and search for the appropriate bone and find it and toggle it. It's usually just a naming issue in terms of the way this thing searches through the skeleton, trying to find the position, or finds like hips and then searches through and tries to locate bones based on what should be attached. So once we've got that, just to hit apply. So now he's got that set up. But the next thing you want to do is go up here at the very top under muscles and settings. And what you'll see is when we apply, and the way this works, these muscles and settings work, is that it's a bunch of poses where he'll do these kind of like moves. And the idea is that you're just testing kind of the posability of the model to see what breaks and what doesn't. And right away you can see, because of the way the spine, the torso and the spine are mapped, this barrel body is attached to the hips, and there's a spine bone in between, and that spine bone can move, and because everything else at the top above that spine bone, the head and the shoulders, is attached to it, everything is moving off of that torso. And the easy way to fix that is just put it in that position. And right here on body, the next window, the next sort of tab down, this body tab, then you get this spine front and back and how it's sort of set at the extreme. That's just moving the bone, right? That bone by itself. If you open that, you're going to see this sort of set limits movement option on it. So if you open that up, you can see where over here in the window this arc or radius is moving. These are just, this is how far the bone itself will go at the extreme. Okay, so what you want to do is just, because that bone isn't mapped to any mesh and it's causing the body to break, you just basically set it to 0, 0. So now his head stays in position and his shoulders stay in position. And the same thing will happen if we go and fix the pose and do this left right. We get the same thing because that's mapped to a different limitation over down here in the body. So then we've got spine left right, and we can just set that to 0, and that'll keep his head in position now. And as far as twist, that's probably fine because we don't care about that. It looks good. And we may care because he has this sort of door. You can't see it based on the lighting, but he has this door on the front of his body, and we don't necessarily want his shoulders to be able to twist across that. But the door doesn't open. It's not set to open right now, so we can leave it that way and see if we run into any issue with the animation. The bigger thing, another one to set, is in the head. There will be a neck nod up and down, and you can see where that causes his head to collide with his body. So what we can do for that is just change the limit on that to so that it doesn't collide. So go to the extremes and just push it until it stops colliding. Same thing on the side. So now he can nod his head forwards and backwards. And the same thing on the left and right. Wrong one. It's actually, that one's okay. And then as far as the turn left and right, that's fine. Although you could, technically, you could open that up if you wanted to make it so you can really turn it. Since he's a robot. Actually, yeah, I'm just going to allow it all the way. You can do a full 360 owl head turn, so. And then there's head up, down. And that's moving the head bone, not the neck. So it'll have the same sort of limitation where we want to keep it from colliding with the body. That. And then the same thing on the side. Okay. And all of the rest should be fine. The arms, I guess we could test those. Let's see, left arm, it'll have this shoulder up and down. It's actually, I don't mind that. That's why we added the bone, just so that we could have that kind of shoulder shrug. It looks okay. Let's try front and back. It should be fine as well. Yeah. And then the arm, up and down. So the down on the inside, it collides a bit where it's going into the body. So we can just fix that by grabbing this and pushing it so that it can't. Probably something like -40. Then we'll just remember that on the other one. So this is the left arm, the right arm, up and down and up, and it's, yeah, so -40. There you go. So this is how you set your limits up for fatter characters, smaller characters. One of the things that you're going to have is this additional settings down here, and this has to do with some extra kind of stretching functionality. But the one that's really kind of important is this feet spacing, because that's going to be different depending on each character. And right now we're going to leave it at 0 so you can see what I mean, which is going to just sort of tie the feet together. And then we're going to have to figure out, once we get some animation on him, we'll have to figure out what this spacing should be for his particular character. So for now, we've got our limit set. Let's apply and say done. So now we've got our character set up, and we can start to set them up in the world and test them out. So I'm going to add a flat plane, just game object, create 3D object, plane. When you add an object into Unity, it's going to be based on wherever your camera is looking at the time that you add it. So if you want to get it set to world 0, just hit 0, 0 on the positions at the top in the inspector. And we're going to apply a material to this. So it's got this default material. We're just going to make in our assets a materials folder. Let's just make it right click, create, just looking for folder. Actually, we'll just make the material here. We'll call this checker. And then apply that to the plane just by dragging it onto the object, so that when we select the object, we'll see checkered here. Now, to make it checker, we want to go and click on its albedo, which is like its color channel. Just click on that, click here, and then you can apply any of these checkers. I like this one, so I'm just going to do the default checker that comes with it. And then we're going to set its scale to be like 100, 100. So we have our checker floor. Maybe make it 50-50. Okay. Now with that set up, we can add our character bender into the scene. Actually, and I want to scale this floor plane up by a large amount. So let's make it 100 and 100 wide. Okay. Maybe, yeah, let's change the tiling then to 100 and see what happens. Okay, that's good. So now we have our character model in the scene, and you can tell he's not as metallic as he was. So part of the reason is that we want to bake our lighting to get kind of a default setup of the scene. So if you go in to do that, you say Windows, Rendering, lighting settings. And when you come into that, you're going to want to have your skybox set up, and then the directional light, the sun source, and it's going to use the default directional light. We can just drag our sun into that in case we've moved it. And then everything else should be fine. Just checking. And it's set for auto generate. You can turn that off. It doesn't take long anymore, but used to that would eat up your processing. And then we're going to just generate our lighting by default. Now you can see he's got some ambient lighting showing up, but there's no material kind of metallicness on him. So if we select his character model just by double clicking on the character itself, and you open up all of these materials, you can see they can't be edited. That's because right now they're all embedded in his prefab, as if they're not supposed to be edited. So to get those to where we can edit them, you can select them in the project in his prefab. Just select the materials and then right click and extract from prefab, and it'll keep the links, but then it'll pull the materials out so that you can actually edit them. So we're just going to put them loose in the characters folder here with him. So now here they are separate. They're still applied, but if we select that metal, we can actually change things. So we can crank up the metallic and check the smoothness so that he starts to look metallic and you see the environment reflected in him somewhat. I want him to be a little bit rougher. The same thing with this gasket black. We might want not metallic, but some more smoothness for roughness to give it kind of a sheen. Dark visor we can leave black. The eye white we want to turn on. We want his eyes to glow. So to do that, there's this emission checkbox. You can check that and just add the color that you want. So in this case, we can sample this color that we had for our panel, and that'll turn his eyes more white. Now, because this isn't, it's a gray, because the color itself falls, it's not fully saturated. In other words, all the way up here, it's not, you can see how that's controlling how much light is emitted from it. So he still has some sort of shadows cast on his eyes. So in order to turn those on to full bright, just move them up to here and give them a little bit more yellow tint. And then same thing for his mouth texture. Now in this case, the mouth texture, we had a texture on our Blender model, but it didn't transfer over in the folder. So if we go to our project folder, here's our character. We want to go to where our Blender file was stored, which should be in 3D models down here. Here's the texture. Just copy that and go back to our Unity folder. Put it in with the characters. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Just paste. Then when we come back into the scene, here's our texture now. We can just drag it to the albedo for the mouth teeth so it shows up, but we actually want it on the emission. So drag it to that. And you can see it's kind of mapped to full white, so we can just tone it by giving it more of a yellow color to get it to match the eyes. Okay. So there's the changes. Our gasket, the metal. I think that's fine. So the one thing to be aware of is that right now he's reflecting just the sky. In other words, this game sky, this look, but he's not actually reflecting the floor. If we want to get him to reflect the floor, we actually have to make a reflection probe. Let me go ahead and save this. So when you're saving in Unity, save the scene, and you want to save the project as well, in case you've made changes to both. If you only save the scene, it'll only keep changes to the scene. It won't necessarily keep changes that you might have modified things in the project folder. So, excuse me. We want to get him reflecting the environment. So let's add just something for him to reflect so I can show you how this works. Go to Game Object, 3D Object, Cube. And I'm just going to put that over here, make it bigger. And we'll give it a, we'll make a new material for it. New, I'm just going to create and material. We'll call this red metal, just to show you how it works on both. So then we're going to change this to a red color and crank the smoothness up so you can see how it would reflect the environment now. I'm going to leave it as plastic and then just apply that to that. So you can see now it's only reflecting the sky, and then it's like this checkerboard floor doesn't exist. If we want it to reflect and him to reflect the checkerboard floor, we need to add, go under Game Object and Light, and then add a reflection probe. Notice how everything went dark as soon as we added that, because this probe actually hasn't been it hasn't been baked yet. So when you do this, you set this probe, a reflection probe. It's got a scale to it that will determine how far out it probes the environment. And then how far, well actually not how far out it probes the environment, that's in the clipping. This is how far that probe will actually affect objects within its bounds. So let's leave it small for this. You don't necessarily need to have it go down below the ground, so you could shift it up. Oh, I've just scaled it up. Let me make it 5. And the center point of the probe, this little gray square right now, or gray sphere, is actually where it's calculating projection of the reflection from. So that kind of matters. Let me just show you what's going to happen when we hit bake. It goes and it calculates the probe. Now notice it still doesn't have the floor in it or the cube. And the reason that that's the case is that if you need to, anything that needs to be reflected or calculated in that probe needs to be set to static. So you select the object. Up here in the inspector, there's a little static next to it. Just select that and then toggle it. And what that means is that it can't move. It's basically, this probe isn't set up to capture like motion. It's just capturing the environment, all the non-moving objects in it, and then it will bake those to its reflection. So now you can see when I bake it, you actually get a red cube reflected on him. You get, he's not reflected on it, on the reflection of the cube, because he's not static. He will be moving in the scene. Whereas the scene objects, if you move him, you'll see how it changes the position of the cube relative to him. But the thing to understand too is that that's the way that's getting projected. The cube is based on this position. So when we move him he's still inside of this box that's saying, no, the cube is actually here relative to its probe, so it's always going to position on the side of him. So if I move him over here, because he's still inside the box, the cube shows up. It's just it's a stationary reflection probe on him. So to get that to work correctly, if you want it to actually shift the reflections, you're going to have multiple probes. So we take and make a smaller probe. Just going to scale this a little bit smaller and then change the box size. And another thing you can do is, rather than projecting from the center out, you can project a box projection where it's from the out in. So when you do that, it changes the, you can see the red cube actually reflected in itself there. But it does change the position of the reflection as you move an object within the box. So you can see where the cube starts to get in front. Kind of, it sort of fixes it. It changes kind of positioning wise how this thing would reflect. So if you didn't want this cube reflected in itself, you could shift this to being inside the cube and bake it then. So now there's no cube reflected in the cube, but it's also no cube reflected on him. So these are just some of the limitations in terms of how you have to think about capturing your environment for kind of a realism. What you can do is set up multiple cubes and transition them. So I'm going to copy and paste, get a second cube with some overlap, and another one, CV, here, over here. And just put a probe on each side of the cube. And what will happen is, as he moves from cube projection to projection to projection, he'll slowly transition kind of a blend between all of the different reflections. So let me bake all of those. So now we have a cube that's getting captured from 4 different probes at 4 different positions. And if we move him, you'll see where the reflection changes. Like a good way to see it is going across his forehead here. Right here, there's some red reflected in his helmet. You can see where that shifts. There's the transition spot as it goes from one to the other. It shifts as you get into each probe until it's behind. So it's like capturing a reflection map for each position that you're going to have him moving to. So let's look at this from the top. I just want to get them so that they're spread out a little bit better. So they should transition halfway across. So we can bake. And the other thing is you can make these higher quality. Right now it's just capturing them at 128 pixel maps, which is pretty low quality, but since he's blurry, that's probably fine. Okay, so now we have all of these maps captured. Let's go ahead and add him. Let's test him with some animations. So we'll save project. One way I like to test to make sure everything works okay is just to put like a third-person character controller. Since this is a game engine, we're going to pretend like we're going to set them up for the game first. So to do that, you can go to the Unity Assets Store, which is this tab, the third tab up here at the top. You'll need an account, and obviously if you've downloaded Unity, you probably have one. And then you're going to look for Standard Assets, and it's this asset right here that has like kind of a modeling kit look to it. Select that, and then you're going to import it into your scene. And we're only going to import the parts that we need, because this comes with a lot of stuff. So it's got like a first-person controller, kind of a ball rolling controller, cars, planes, and a bunch of other stuff, some material and effects. So we don't need the sample scenes. We don't need the materials. Let's just close that. In the standard assets, it comes with some 2D stuff as well. We don't need that. We don't need the cameras. Characters, we don't want the first person. We don't need the roller ball. We want the third person. And cross-platform input we do need to keep, because that's part of some of the controllers on the third person character. Editor we'll keep. We can turn off water though, and effects. And environment has some trees in it. We'll keep the fonts. We can turn off the particle systems. Physics materials we'll keep. Prototyping we'll keep the, and we'll turn those off. And utility, we'll keep those because they have some nice scripts. Like there's this activate trigger script, which is super useful for like making a kind of collision box where he'll run into something and it'll activate something. We'll turn off the vehicles, and that's it. So now if we import, going and double checking all of the materials and the scripts to make sure that there's no errors with this version, which will happen if you get some older stuff. Comes in, there is a player settings validation requested build target group. That's just the build target that's set up, but it's not a big deal. So if we look at our console, we've got 2 errors. Player settings validation request target doesn't exist, won't be added, so that's all fine. Now if we go back to our scene, we've got, let me save this, save project. We've got our character, and what we want to do is in our standard assets, there's going to be a characters folder as well with this third person character. Go into the prefabs, and we're going to take this third person character right here and put him in our scene, and we're just going to copy and paste things between one and the other. So he's got this third person controller set up on him, and we just want to transfer that onto Bender here. So select him. He's got an animator, rigid body, so we'll copy that component. Just right click on it, select Bender. And when you paste, you can't paste down here in this empty part. You have to click on the last component in the list, and paste component is new, so that's added our rigid body. Let's add the capsule collider, copy that component, and then paste as new. When that adds that component to him, you can see it's a little bit short. Width-wise, it's okay. He'll collide with walls and stuff, but we'll just leave it as is for now, so I don't have to change it too much. Then the last thing we want to do is copy this third person control script. copy the component and paste it as new, and that's going to copy the other one that relies on it as well. So now we can just take this and delete him. And if we play this, let me save it. If we play this, you'll get this weird behavior where you see you're controlling him. I'm using the WAS and D keys to roll him around, but there's no animation playing. And that is because when we made this, we copied and pasted everything. We did not set our controller on our animator. Right now it's got none. So we just need to click on that and change it to third person animator controller. I'll show you, this is basically a state machine. So if I select that, it'll show up over here in my project window. This is it. And you see how it's got this little like boxes and arrows and stuff. That's just an icon for a state machine. If you double click on that, here's the actual state machine. So it's got, it'll have, different state machines will have different, the more complex the controller, the more states it'll have. But right now we see we've got this airborne state and a crouching state, entry, grounded, which is like a check to see if he's on the ground, like a collision. And that's these. And then he's got transitions between airborne and crouching and grounded. And then if you double click on grounded, this is the actual blend tree for his character animation that's controlled by the script, the WASD script. So it's like two different state machines. This is the blend tree for the being in the air, and then this is the blend tree for being on the ground. And they transition between based on these controls, like how it's going to blend. And there's tutorials on how to set this up online if you want to make your own, but I find that this third person one works pretty well. It's just a testing mechanism for characters. So now if we hit play, that we've set his character controller, you see him, you see how he wants to go and enter this jump state, and that's just a ground check problem. So when we copied and pasted, let's turn off, select him. When we copied and pasted this third person controller, there's a ground check distance right here at the very end of it, and basically it defaults to 0.1, which is not enough. So just set that to like 0.3, and that'll fix his falling state. So now when he walks, this is how he runs, and he works pretty good. He can jump, he can crouch. His legs probably, see where his legs are colliding with his torso, that probably needs to be fixed. I kind of like the fact that he can crouch that small though, so to be honest, if I fixed that by limiting his hips, he wouldn't be able to crouch as much. He's also floating off the ground a little bit, so we can fix that by setting his collision capsule here. So on the capsule collider, you just want to, we'll make him a little bit wider. We'll change the center to go up a little bit. Yeah, let's make it 0.88. It was at 0.8. And we'll make the radius a little bit wider. See if that drops him to the ground. Yeah. So now his feet are in the ground a little bit. So probably more like 8.85 for the center. See what that looks like. Yeah, it's good. So he'll also collide with objects, like I'm running into this cube now. And you can see where his arm will collide. And it's just because he's got this capsule collider on him. So you can make the capsule collider bigger. I kind of like where it's colliding right now. Alright, so now we have this third person controller. And let's say we want to make it so that the camera follows him. There's a couple ways of doing that. We could literally embed the camera behind him inside of his character. So if we just took it and drug it like right here inside of him as coming under his armature, and if we hit play, now when he moves, the camera is just sort of locked to his avatar behind him, and that works to a certain degree, but not great. So let's take this and pull it back out. So there's our camera. So what we really want to do here is get kind of a better camera control, and luckily there's a free utility with Blender called Cinemachine that is useful for a lot of different things. It's basically a way of adding like cinematography camera controls to your game, and it works really well. So what you want to do is we want to add that package to our game here. So we can go to Window and then Package Manager, and this is like a list of all the packages that come that are possible in terms of adding them to your Unity. There's a lot. Some of them are already added by default depending on the way you instantiated your project, but the one we want is this Cinemachine right here, Cinemachine 2.50. So we want to just install that. If you select it, and if you can't find it, just do a search, Cinemachine. There you go, 2.50. And it'll have an install button if it's not already installed. So you install it. And there's this option for samples, example, if you want to check out all the different ways you can use it. I'm going to show you some of them in this video. But if you want to be able to check out all the different ways of setting up cameras and stuff, these example projects are pretty useful, and you can import those into your project without taking up too much space. So we're importing. So like I said, if you want, you can import these, but you don't have to. And notice you get it once it's installed, you get the import into project. If you want to import those, I'm not going to for this. There's probably even some videos that'll explain each one of those, but it's a good way of testing out all the different camera setups because there's a lot. Now that we have imported Cinemachine up in our interface, we actually have a Cinemachine option for pull down, and the one that we're interested in is actually these are virtual cameras, so these are good for setting up animations using timeline. We're going to cover that in this video as well. But just for this purpose, I want to make a Free Look camera, which is a third-person kind of camera that will float around him. So I've just added that to our scene right here. And all Cinemachine cameras are kind of like virtual cameras with rigs or whatever, and they take control of the main camera. So when we added this CM Free Look, it added a brain script to our kind of an AI control script to our main camera, which is this. And you don't need to mess with that too much. If you're doing some more advanced stuff, you can. But what we're interested in is this Free Look camera. When we select the Free Look camera, it'll show up over here in the inspector. We want to give it something to follow, in this case our character, and we'll select our scene, and we can make it follow either the armature or bender, whichever one. Let's do the armature. And you notice that as soon as we click that, the camera pops into place and creates this kind of rig with a, I don't know if you can see, there's 3 rings. There's a low, a medium, and a high ring, and this arc in between. And that means there's 3 different camera positions relative to the character here. So right now, if you're in the low position, you're in this tight ring that'll circle around him, and in the medium position, this is all controlled via mouse while he's running around, you'll be in this sort of like looking down from high up kind of position. And then this higher position is almost like an isometric orbit kind of control. And that where it gets positioned is based on the target that we selected. So we selected armature. if we want it to be sort of around his feet, we might select, let's see what happens if we select him. Yeah, that moves it down a little bit lower, which is his mesh because it's at the ground. So we can set it, yeah, let's do the ground one. So it sort of hovers around his knees a little bit better, and then that way the mid is a little bit higher on him. And let's just test that out. And then the look at, if we want to look at something, is basically just if we, let's look at it without a look at first. So now when we move our camera around, it's moving relative to him. And it's looking straight out from him. So you can see this kind of, I'm moving my mouse up and down. Because it's not looking at our character, we get our scene, it's just straightforward and doesn't really shift. So we want to make it look at him. And in this case, we want to, this is the overall look, and then you can individually set these for each rig for the low, medium, high. So we want to make this look at his head, I'm guessing. So now when we hit play and we look, we're orbiting around and always looking at his head. Okay. And you notice how I've got this red and blue on the screen. That's also part of Cinemachine. That's a composition kind of tool that we can set. Different for each character. So now when he runs, we get this ability to follow the camera around. So we can look behind him. So we're kind of using this mouse to drive and look around. The thing is, this camera is a little bit close to him, so we probably want to open it up a little bit. So you have to think about how this is going to work relative to him. So when we're in the middle, we can tell that our middle rig here, that our camera is kind of narrow. It's too, let's see, I'll just show you. So this is middle. My mouse is in the middle of the screen. This is low, so you can tell I've zoomed in a little bit. And then this is high. Similar to low, but I'm up high. So you can tell my field of view here for this middle shot is kind of narrow. I may want to open it up a little bit wider. To do that, just go to the middle rig and change your, let's see, so you can create a look at override. I'm just trying to figure out. So you can change how the dampening works in terms of the responsiveness, where it can have a little bit more easing on it. And you can change the tracked object offset. So we can position, let's just see what happens as I scroll these. That's the left and right. So let's set that back to 0. It just means it's going to be center of screen. One way we can see these is if we go to game, if we track and we change that now, depending on if we're in that view. It's not actually changing anything. I'm just trying to figure out the, yeah, screen X, screen Y. So this will change. You can see right now there's, I don't know if you can see this, it shows all 3 cameras overlapped. So if I shift, you can see where I'm kind of shifting that position. That's just changing how he'll sit in, and when I'm at the middle camera, he'll either sit more left or more right on the screen, which can be kind of super useful. I'm just going to shift it to there and show you what that looks like. And then you can also change like this dead zone. You can open that up so that there's a little bit more movement, ability to move around. and it kind of creates an open box where the camera won't move until he's moved left or right of that. And then let's see, just trying to figure out, oh, this is the dead zone width, which the red is the dead zone. It just means that if he moves, we've got like a ton of kind of wiggle space inside the blue here. If it allows, if the focal target ever gets to that red, it'll just stop movement and the camera will track. So, so here's where you can set the orbits. So we can see that you got a top rig, middle rig, and a bottom rig. You can change their height and their radius. Right now I'm going to change the radius. I move this out to give them sort of more room at the middle. And then let's take a look at that. So you can see where as I move, when he shifts to the left there, I'm at the middle, or actually I must have moved the top. It was the top rig that I shifted to the left, but you can see where it sort of gives you this side view of him. And that's where the composition, these red and blue kind of focal points, comes in handy. So which one was it that I was in the top rig where I did the Screen X right here. So if we set it to center at the top, or maybe it's just a little bit more to the left, and then maybe down. That way we get a little more forward view on the top rig. And then the middle rig could be more to the left, like that. So imagine kind of a third-person shooter, so that you can see what's going on in the foreground. And you might even have like a target that's somehow attached to him that's actually out in front of him, and you could target that for the look point, but then the orbit might look a little weird. All right, so you can see where when I'm zoomed out at the middle, he sort of composes to the left. And when I come in low, I'm looking at him. And again, I may want to go a little bit to the left because he might be working like a keypad or something that I'm trying to do a stealth move. And then there he is at the top. So it's a way of kind of testing out. Yeah, that looks pretty good from a third-person perspective. It's easier to drive. I may want some less, because my reaction time left and right is really kind of sharp, which is good for a shooting game, but you may be a little bit sickening for a platformer. You may want a little more lag. So you can go and you can add that with the dampening. So right now it's at 1. And this is in terms of follow. So if you crank that up, now when we are following, it's not the mouse control, but the actual look control will ease a little bit. And then the aim, horizontal vertical dampening, is set to 0. So then if we crank that up, there's a little ease on the edge. It's not so harsh, but we can do better. I'm going to crank that up. Oh, that's on the top rig, actually. I want to set it as a default. Yeah, and at the same time, we may want to take that top rig and increase the height, so the distance and the radius. And we can see that if we look at it here. Here's what we're creating now. So we've got this low rig this medium rig and this high that gets kind of into a more orthographic top-down look. And then as far as the middle rig, you can change the dampening on everything too to make it tighter. So the middle might be when you're shooting, so you might keep the horizontal vertical dampening a little bit tighter there. We're going to make them a little loose though, like we're side scroll. And for the bottom, you may want it less because you're closer in. So and also too, I'm going to shift that bottom camera. Just got the screen X on it. Yeah, shift it over to the left as well. All right, let's see what that looks like. Excuse me. So now he's to the left instead of being centered, which is nice because we can still see. It's a little bit close up on him. We may want to raise the height and move it further out. The middle has this nice smooth kind of roll, and then the top gets really far out so you can kind of see where you're going. You notice how it kind of has that lag now. When I move, he can get off screen. So anyway, that gives you the idea. If I turn this off now, I can see it without the composition tools in case they were getting in the way. Yeah, I like the way it composes. Cinemachine is really fun to play with. You can create some nice moves in terms of composition. So this over the shoulder shot for third person shooting. You'd have to obviously kind of, if you're doing a shooter, you've got to come up with a way of creating the shooting rig setting. But yeah, it works pretty well. Okay. So anyway, now we've got that set up. Let's save. Now I'm going to show you how you can make a cutscene. Save the project. So let's see. We've got our character, and we're in the game view. So we've got our character. We've set up this scene. We want to make kind of a cutscene of him walking down the street. I'm just trying to think the right way to get the emotion in there, because right now we have some animations set up for him. Actually, one of the things I wanted to check was that foot placement. Let's do that real quick. So you can see where his feet kind of brush against each other. And when he's running, you can see how his legs are sort of turned in. That's that setting I was talking about in the character setup. So let's go to his character. It's the foot setting. So if we go to the rig, configure, go into muscles and settings, it's this free feet spacing. So we just want to make his feet go. I'm going to show you at 0.5 what it looks like because it's kind of funny, and to show you what this is actually doing. Some fatter characters may require something like a 0.5 in terms of the spacing, but for him it's going to look pretty funny. See how now his legs are locked apart, and when he runs, it's just making his targets for his feet spacing that far apart. So the real setting that we want to use for him is something more like a 0.1 on the feet spacing. So if you set that, apply, done. And you'll notice that we would have noticed this more in terms of the animation. So now his feet sort of stand wide, and when he runs, you can see that they're straight down.